My name is Stella, and at 34 years old, I thought I knew everything about my husband Marcus and his family. But that December evening, when I arrived at his office building 30 minutes early for our anniversary dinner, I saw my sister-in-law Rachel's distinctive red BMW in the parking lot. Walking through the empty hallway toward Marcus's office, I heard his voice, then Rachel's familiar laugh. But it was the whispered words that made my blood freeze. Stella can never know about the baby, Marcus said, or about Mom's will. Before I continue this story that changed my life forever, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit like and subscribe if you want to hear how I discovered the truth about my own family. 7 years. That's how long Marcus and I had been married, and for most of that time I believed we had built something beautiful together. We met at a charity gala when I was 27, a middle school teacher trying to make a difference in underprivileged communities. Marcus swept into my life like a force of nature, all confidence and charm, heir to his family's real estate empire that his late father had built from nothing. I still remember how nervous I was meeting his mother Eleanor for the first time. She sat in their mansion's parlor examining me like I was a piece of art she was considering purchasing but finding lacking. "Your background is quite modest," she had said, making the word modest sound like something distasteful she'd found on her shoe. Marcus squeezed my hand under the table that day, a silent promise that her opinion didn't matter. How wrong I was to believe him. Rachel, Marcus's younger sister by 3 years, became my unexpected salvation in those early days. Where Eleanor was ice, Rachel was warmth. She would roll her eyes at her mother's snobbish comments and later take me shopping, teaching me the unspoken rules of their world. "You're too good for this family," she'd whisper conspiratorially over wine, "but I'm glad you're here." We became inseparable, closer than I'd ever been with my own sister who lived across the country. The first crack in our perfect facade appeared 3 years into our marriage when we started trying for children. Month after month brought disappointment, and with each negative pregnancy test, I watched something shift in Marcus's eyes. Not disappointment exactly, but something else I couldn't quite name. When we finally sought fertility treatment, he was supportive, holding my hand through every appointment, every injection, every failed cycle. Dr. Harrison, our fertility specialist, seemed puzzled by our lack of success. "Your numbers look good." He'd tell us sometimes these things just take time. Marcus would nod solemnly, rubbing my back as I fought back tears. We went through 3 rounds of IVF, each one draining our emotions and my body. The hormones made me sick, the hope made me vulnerable, and the failures made me feel broken. What struck me as odd looking back now was how Eleanor's attitude toward me shifted during this period. The woman who had spent 4 years barely tolerating my presence suddenly became almost maternal. She started inviting me to lunch, just the two of us. She'd pat my hand and tell me stories about her own struggles with fertility before having Marcus and Rachel. "You're family now." "Dear, truly family," she said one afternoon, pressing a bottle of specialty vitamins into my hands. These helped me enormously back in my day. Rachel, meanwhile, became my rock. She'd show up at our house with ice cream and terrible movies when the treatments failed. She'd rage against the unfairness of it all, how someone as loving as me deserved to be a mother. She even offered through tears one night after too much wine to be our surrogate if it came to that. The offer had made me sob with gratitude, though Marcus had quickly shut down the idea. "That's not necessary." He'd said, his tone sharper than intended. In recent months, I'd noticed changes in Marcus that I tried to rationalize away. His phone, which used to lie carelessly around the house, now never left his side. He'd step out to take calls, claiming they were about sensitive business deals. He started having late meetings several times a week, always with international clients in different time zones. When he'd come to bed, he'd pull me close and whisper that everything he did was for our future family. The morning of our 7th anniversary, I woke to find a bouquet of white roses on my pillow and a note in Marcus's handwriting. "7 years of loving you isn't enough. Can't wait for 70 more. Dinner at Romano's at 7. I'd smiled, thinking maybe we were finally healing from the fertility struggles, ready to consider other options like adoption, which I gently suggested, but Marcus had always deflected. I decided to surprise him by arriving early at his office with his favorite coffee from the boutique place downtown, the one that required waiting in line for 30 minutes but made him smile like a kid on Christmas morning. I wanted to remind him of the spontaneous woman he'd fallen in love with before the medications and disappointments had dulled my spark. The parking garage was nearly empty when I pulled in at 6:30. Most of the office workers had already left for the day, eager to start their weekends. But there, in the reserved section near the elevator, sat Rachel's unmistakable red BMW, with its vanity plate that read Rach3L. My first thought was innocent enough. Maybe she was surprising us for our anniversary dinner. It would be just like her to arrange something special. But as I walked through the hushed hallway toward Marcus's corner office, something felt wrong. The building was too quiet. That peculiar silence that makes every small sound seem amplified. I could hear the fluorescent lights humming overhead, the distant ding of an elevator, and then as I approached Marcus's door, the low murmur of voices from within. I raised my hand to knock, then hesitated when I heard Rachel laugh. It wasn't her usual bright, infectious laugh. This was different, nervous, almost guilty. Then Marcus's voice, clearer now that I was closer. "The arrangement is working perfectly," he said. "She trusts you completely." My hand froze inches from the door. She. Were they talking about me? I knew I should announce myself, but something primal made me stay silent, listening. Rachel's voice came next, softer, tinged with something that sounded like regret. "I know, but sometimes I feel guilty. She's been nothing but good to me, Marcus." "Are you sure there's no other way?" "It's for the family legacy," Marcus replied, his tone harder than I'd ever heard him use with his sister. "You know what's at stake. Mom's been clear about this from the beginning. Eleanor insisted on this before she gets worse. We can't let everything our father built go to outsiders." Outsiders? The word hit me like a physical blow. Is that what I was after? 7 years of marriage? An outsider. "The timeline has to be perfect," Marcus continued. "After the holidays, when Mom's condition deteriorates. Dr. Brennan has already been paid. He'll document everything we need." My phone, clutched in my trembling hand, suddenly slipped. It hit the marble floor with a crack that seemed to echo like thunder in the quiet hallway. Inside the office, both voices stopped abruptly. "Move," my brain screamed at me. "Move now." I grabbed my phone and practically dove into the supply closet 3 doors down, pulling the door closed just as I heard Marcus's office door open. Through the crack under the door, I could see shadows moving in the hallway. "Did you hear that?" Rachel's voice, tense and worried. Marcus's footsteps came closer, paused right outside the supply closet. My heart was beating so loud I was certain he could hear it. I pressed my hand over my mouth, forcing myself to breathe silently through my nose. After what felt like hours but was probably only seconds, his footsteps retreated. "Just paranoid," he said, his voice moving back toward his office. Too much at stake now to get careless. Their voices became muffled again as they returned to his office, but I caught fragments. Something about restructuring everything, about biological heirs, about making sure I never found out about the baby. The baby. Rachel was pregnant, but she'd told me just last month that she'd been diagnosed with endometriosis, that children weren't in her future. I waited another 10 minutes, maybe 15, before carefully opening the closet door. The hallway was empty again. On shaking legs, I made my way back to the elevator, then to my car. I sat there in the driver's seat, staring at nothing, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. Eleanor's illness. What illness? She'd seemed perfectly healthy at lunch last week, complaining about her trainer making her do burpees. The baby that I couldn't know about. Rachel's guilty feelings. Marcus calling me an outsider. Dr. Brennan being paid. None of it made sense, but all of it felt wrong, deeply, terrifyingly wrong. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone and typed a text to Marcus. "Food poisoning hit suddenly. Have to cancel dinner. I'm so sorry. Rain check." His response came quickly, full of concern and love emojis. "Oh no, baby. I'll come home right away. Do you need anything?" "No, I'm just going to sleep." See you later. Love you. Love you too, sweetheart. Feel better. I drove home on autopilot, my mind racing through every interaction from the past months, looking for clues I'd missed. Every secret phone call, every whispered conversation that stopped when I entered the room, every strange look between Marcus and his family. How long had they been planning whatever this was? And what exactly were they planning? That night, Marcus came home with chicken soup from my favorite deli and a concerned expression that seemed genuinely worried. He felt my forehead for fever, tucked me into bed, and brought me crackers and ginger ale. The perfect caring husband. If I hadn't heard what I'd heard, I would have melted into his care, grateful for his attention. "How was your day?" I asked, weakly testing him. Long he sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. Back-to-back meetings. "I was looking forward to dinner tonight. I'm sorry you're not feeling well." Not one mention of Rachel being at his office. I pretended to drift off to sleep, keeping my breathing deep, and even as he moved around our bedroom. Once he thought I was unconscious, I heard him make a hushed phone call from our bathroom. "The arrangements are still in place," he whispered. "No, she doesn't suspect anything." "Yes, I'll handle it." The next morning after Marcus left for his Saturday golf game with clients, I knew I needed help. But who could I trust? Not Rachel, obviously. Not Eleanor. Not even our mutual friends who were really Marcus's friends first. Then I remembered James Morrison, a private investigator my college roommate had hired during her messy divorce. He'd uncovered her ex-husband's hidden assets and affair with precision and discretion. I met James at a coffee shop in a neighborhood where I knew no one. He was exactly as I remembered from my friend's description. Mid-50s, unremarkable face, the kind of person who could blend into any crowd. Perfect for his line of work. "I need to know what my husband is hiding," I told him, sliding a check across the table. "And I need to know quickly." While James began his investigation, I started my own. I'd never been the type to snoop, respecting privacy and trusting completely. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Someone driven by an urgent need to understand the danger I was in. Our joint bank accounts showed regular activity, nothing unusual on the surface. But when I dug deeper, I found irregularities. Transfers to accounts I didn't recognize, always just under the amount that would trigger federal reporting. They'd started 6 months ago, small at first, then growing larger. When I tried to trace them, I hit walls. The accounts were in Marcus's name, only opened at banks where we didn't have relationships. There were payments to a medical consultant named Dr. Brennan, the same name I'd heard in Marcus's office. $5,000 a month for the past 4 months. When I searched for Dr. Brennan online, I found nothing. No practice, no LinkedIn, no medical board registration. A ghost being paid very real money. Rachel started visiting more frequently over the next week, always when Marcus was home. She'd bring dinner, claiming she was worried about my recent food poisoning incident. She'd hover, watching me take the vitamins Eleanor had given me, making sure I ate enough. "You need to keep your strength up," she'd say, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. During one of these visits, Rachel left her purse in our bathroom while helping Marcus with something in his office. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't help myself. Inside, among the usual items, I found a prescription bottle. Birth control pills. Current prescription half empty. My sister-in-law, who claimed she couldn't have children who had cried with me over our shared infertility, was on birth control. But that wasn't the most shocking discovery. There was also a business card for Reproductive Partners, a fertility clinic across town. Not the one Marcus and I had been going to. On the back, in Rachel's handwriting, were appointment times for the next 3 months. A few days later, I invited Eleanor to lunch, claiming I wanted her advice on redecorating our guest room. She seemed delighted, talking animatedly about color schemes and furniture. Then I casually mentioned how well she looked, how healthy. "Thank you, dear," she said, then caught herself. "Though of course at my age things can change quickly. Your doctor must be wonderful," I probed. "Dr. Jameson, isn't it?" She paused just a fraction too long. "Yes, Dr. Jameson. Wonderful man." I'd already called Dr. Jameson's office. Eleanor hadn't been a patient there in over 2 years. That evening, while Marcus was in the shower, I did something I'd never done before. I went into his home office and searched his desk. In a locked drawer that I opened with a letter opener, I found documents that made my blood run cold. It was a trust document dated just last month for the Hamilton Family Legacy Trust. The language was dense legal, but certain phrases stood out. Biological heirs only. Direct bloodline succession. And then the knife to my heart. In the event of no biological heirs from Marcus Hamilton, all assets transfer to secondary biological heirs from Rachel Hamilton. My name appeared nowhere in the document. 7 years of marriage, and I wasn't even a footnote in their future plans. There was also a medical report partially hidden under other papers. It was from Dr. Harrison, our fertility doctor, but it wasn't addressed to us. It was addressed to Marcus alone. The tests show no issues with the provided samples. Successful implantation should occur within normal parameters. Provided samples. Not our samples. His samples. My phone buzzed with a text from James Morrison. We need to meet. Urgent. The next morning I told Marcus I was meeting my sister for brunch. He barely looked up from his laptop, waving absently as I left. James had suggested we meet at a park this time, somewhere we could walk and talk without being overheard. What he told me shattered the last pieces of my naivety. Your sister-in-law has been visiting reproductive partners for the past 6 months. He began handing me a folder of photographs. She's registered as a patient under her own name, but the biological material donor is listed as Marcus Hamilton. I stared at the papers, unable to process what I was reading. But they're siblings. That's not for what you're thinking, James clarified quickly. They're not creating a child together in the traditional sense. She's using his genetic material with a donor egg. The child will be biologically his, but carried by her. Legally, she'll be the mother, but genetically the child will be Marcus's heir. The world tilted. I had to sit down on a nearby bench, the folder shaking in my hands. There's more, James continued gently. I've been investigating Eleanor's will. She recently changed it completely, restructuring the family trust. Everything goes to biological grandchildren only. If you had a child with Marcus through adoption, or even using donor eggs, that child would inherit nothing. They wouldn't be considered true family. But our IVF treatments, I whispered. We tried so hard. James's face was grim. I have a contact at your fertility clinic. Off the record, they told me there were irregularities with your treatment. Medications that were supposed to be one thing, but were actually another. Your husband has been in communication with Dr. Harrison for months before you even started treatment. I believe he's been sabotaging your chances of conception from the beginning. I thought about all those injections, the hormones that made me so sick, the crushing disappointment with each failure. All of it orchestrated by the man who held me while I cried. The vitamins Eleanor gave me, I said suddenly. She insisted I take them. James nodded. I'd have them tested if I were you. Based on everything else, I wouldn't trust anything that family gives you. He handed me another document. This was the hardest to find. It's a life insurance policy taken out on you 2 years ago. Marcus is the sole beneficiary. $2 million. $2 million if I died. Has he done any unusual searches on his computer? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. James pulled out his phone, showing me screenshots. These are from his browser history over the past month. Accidental household deaths. Medication interactions. How long for poisoning to be undetectable? I was going to be sick. The man I'd shared a bed with for 7 years was researching how to kill me. What do I do? I asked, looking at James desperately. You document everything. You protect yourself. And you get out. But carefully. If they know you know, things could escalate quickly. I spent the rest of that day in a haze, mechanically going through the motions of normal life, while my mind raced. When Marcus came home that evening, I forced myself to smile, to accept his kiss, to sit through dinner while he talked about his day. Rachel joined us, as she had been doing more frequently, and I watched them. Really watched them. They weren't having an affair. That much was clear. Their interactions were sibling normal, maybe even a bit strained. But there were moments. Quick glances when they thought I wasn't looking. Rachel's hand going to her still flat stomach unconsciously. Marcus's jaw tightening when I mentioned wanting to try another round of IVF. After dinner, Eleanor called and Marcus put her on speaker. "How are you feeling, dear?" she asked me, her voice dripping with false concern. "Better, thank you, Eleanor. Are you taking those vitamins I gave you? They're so important for your health." Every day I lied. "Wonderful. We must keep you healthy. The family needs you strong." The family. The family that was planning to discard me like trash once they'd secured their precious biological heir through their twisted arrangement. That night I excused myself early, claiming lingering fatigue. In our bedroom, I carefully opened one of the vitamin capsules Eleanor had given me. The powder inside wasn't white like normal vitamins. It had a grayish tinge and a bitter smell. I sealed it in a baggie and hid it in my jewelry box. Tomorrow I'd have it tested. As I lay in bed pretending to sleep while Marcus worked late in his office again, I thought about the woman I'd been just a week ago. Trusting, loving, desperate for a child, grateful for family that had accepted me. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder, smarter, and absolutely determined to survive. They thought I was weak, broken by infertility and isolation. They thought I would never figure out their plan. They were wrong. My lawyer cousin Benjamin was the only family I had left that I truly trusted. We'd grown up together, and he'd gone on to become a successful attorney specializing in family law and estate planning. When I called him and said I needed help, he didn't hesitate. We met at his office after hours where I laid out everything James had discovered. Benjamin's face grew increasingly grim as he reviewed the documents. "This is conspiracy to commit fraud at minimum," he said. "The insurance policy combined with those searches could be attempted murder. We need to be very careful about how we proceed." Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize, a spy in my own home. Benjamin had connected me with a security expert who showed me how to install tiny cameras in strategic locations. One in the living room hidden in a picture frame, one in Marcus's office tucked behind books, one in our bedroom disguised as a phone charger. The recordings were illuminating and heartbreaking in equal measure. I caught Marcus and Rachel discussing their timeline while they thought I was at yoga. "She'll be gone by spring," Marcus said casually, like he was discussing replacing old furniture. "The vitamins are working, but slowly. We can't raise suspicions. Mom wants it done before the baby comes," Rachel replied, her hand on her stomach. "She's getting impatient." "Mom can wait," Marcus snapped. "If Stella dies too suddenly, there'll be an investigation. It has to look natural, like her body just gave out from all the fertility treatments. People will be sympathetic. The grieving widower who lost his wife to their desperate attempts to have a child." I had to run to the bathroom to vomit after hearing that. They'd planned my death story, my eulogy, before I was even gone. The next day, I played the devoted wife perfectly. I made Marcus's favorite breakfast, kissed him goodbye, reminded him about dinner with his colleagues that weekend. Then I drove to a different clinic, 3 towns over, where I'd been secretly getting my blood tested weekly. The results confirmed what James and I suspected. There were traces of heavy metals in my system. Not enough to kill quickly, but enough to cause organ failure over time. Eleanor's vitamins were slowly poisoning me. Armed with this evidence, I made a decision. I stopped taking the vitamins, but pretended to continue. Each morning I'd make a show of swallowing them in front of Marcus or Rachel when they were around, but I'd perfected the art of hiding them under my tongue and spitting them out later. My body began to recover slowly. The headaches that had plagued me for months started to fade. The constant fatigue lifted. I had to be careful to still appear weak, tired, sick when they were around. It was exhausting performing illness while my strength returned. During this time, I also discovered something else. The fertility clinic I'd started visiting in secret, the one where no one knew Marcus ran comprehensive tests. The doctor there, Dr. Patricia Chen, was puzzled by my history. "Based on these results, there's no medical reason you shouldn't have conceived," she told me. "In fact, you're quite fertile. Whatever treatments you were receiving before, they weren't designed to help you get pregnant. Quite the opposite." She showed me my test results compared to my records from Dr. Harrison. The medications I thought were fertility hormones were actually mild contraceptives designed to prevent implantation while mimicking the side effects of legitimate treatment. Every injection, every pill, every desperate hope had been a lie orchestrated by my husband. But there was hope. Dr. Chen believed that with proper treatment I could conceive quickly. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Rachel was carrying Marcus's child through their elaborate scheme, I could potentially carry his child naturally, if they only knew. One evening while doing laundry, I found Rachel's diary in her overnight bag. She'd been staying over more frequently and she'd gotten careless. Or maybe she simply never imagined I'd violate her privacy. The old me wouldn't have. But the old me was gone. Her entries went back 2 years detailing the entire conspiracy. Mom approached me about the plan today. She says the family bloodline must remain pure. Stella's nice enough, but she's not our kind. Middle-class values don't build empires. Marcus agrees, though he seems conflicted. He does care for her in his way. But legacy matters more. Another entry from 6 months ago. The procedure worked. I'm pregnant with Marcus's child. It feels wrong, but Mom says this is the only way. The family fortune must stay in the family. Real family. Stella will never know. Marcus will be a wonderful uncle to the baby, and after Stella's gone, he can adopt the child legally. It's perfect, really. Except for the guilt that keeps me awake at night. And from just last week, Stella looks weaker every day. The vitamins are working. Marcus says it'll all be over soon. I'll miss her, strangely enough. She's been nothing but kind to me. But sacrifices must be made for the greater good. Dad would understand. He always said family comes first, everyone else second. I photographed every page, my hands steady, despite the rage building in my chest. These people who I'd loved, who I'd considered my family, had planned my murder like a business transaction. The financial records Benjamin helped me uncover were equally damning. Marcus had been slowly moving assets out of our joint accounts into offshore holdings. The house which I thought we owned together had been transferred to a trust that I wasn't part of. If I died or divorced him, I'd get nothing. 7 years of marriage would be erased like they never happened. But the most shocking discovery came from an unexpected source. Thomas Marcus's cousin reached out to me after noticing some irregularities in the family business structure. He'd been pushed out of the company years ago by Eleanor, despite his father being a founding partner with Eleanor's husband. She's done this before, Thomas told me over coffee at a discreet location. My sister died in a car accident 10 years ago, just after she'd started asking questions about her inheritance. The police said it was an accident, but I never believed it. Be careful, Stella. That family eliminates problems, and anyone who threatens their wealth becomes a problem. With each piece of evidence, the picture became clearer. I wasn't the first person Eleanor had tried to remove. I was just the latest in a pattern of elimination that had kept the Hamilton fortune concentrated in Eleanor's direct line. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. They saw a broken woman desperate for children, weakened by fake treatments and slow poisoning. They didn't see the fighter who'd worked 3 jobs to put herself through college. They didn't see the woman who'd survived her own parents' deaths at 17 and still managed to build a life. Benjamin helped me set up my own offshore accounts, moving my inheritance from my parents that I'd never touched, keeping it as our emergency fund. It wasn't much compared to the Hamilton fortune, but it was mine, and they couldn't touch it. I also started recording everything more systematically. Every conversation, every meal where they watched me take the poisoned vitamins, every concerned check-in that was really checking if I was dying fast enough. The evidence mounted day by day, a digital fortress protecting me from their gaslighting. One night Marcus came to bed particularly affectionate, pulling me close, whispering about trying for a baby again. Maybe we should consider using a donor egg, he suggested. I know how much you want to be a mother. The cruel irony of his suggestion, while his sister carried his biological child while he poisoned me slowly, was almost too much to bear. But I played along, let him think I was considering it all, while knowing that if I wanted, I could be pregnant with his child within months using the legitimate treatment from Dr. Chen. Sometimes I wondered if I should just run, pack what I could, and disappear. But then I thought about the next woman Marcus would marry, the next person Eleanor would slowly poison, the next family member who would mysteriously die when they became inconvenient. No, running wasn't enough. They needed to be stopped. The birthday party was my idea, though I made it seem like Rachel's. Eleanor's 70th birthday was coming up, and I suggested to Rachel that we should do something special, intimate, just family and close business associates. She's been so good to me, I told Rachel, making my voice weak and grateful. I want to celebrate her while I still can. Rachel's eyes had teared up, probably thinking about how soon I'd be gone. Of course, she'd said, hugging me. That's beautiful, Stella. Mom will love that. I insisted on planning everything. The venue, a private dining room at Eleanor's favorite restaurant. The guest list carefully curated to include not just family but also business partners, lawyers, and even a few journalists who covered the society pages. The more witnesses, the better. In the weeks leading up to the party, I made other preparations. I met with Dr. Chen and started legitimate fertility treatment. The real kind, not the poison Marcus had been feeding me. Within 2 weeks, the impossible happened. 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test, then confirmed by blood work. Not just pregnant, but with twins. The irony was delicious. While they plotted my death to secure their biological heir through their convoluted scheme, I was carrying 2 of Marcus's biological children. The very thing they claimed to want growing inside the woman they were trying to kill. I told no one except Benjamin, who updated our legal strategy accordingly. The children I carried were evidence of their own, proof that I could conceive when not being poisoned, proof that everything about the fertility treatments had been a lie. The night of the party arrived, and I dressed carefully. A flowing dress that didn't yet show my pregnancy, but would photograph well. Eleanor commented on how nice I looked, though she seemed puzzled. The vitamins must be helping, she mused. You have more color in your cheeks. If only she knew it was because I'd stopped taking her poison. The dining room was beautiful, all soft lighting and elegant flowers. The guests mingled champagne, flowing, everyone in good spirits. Marcus played the devoted husband, his hand on my lower back, introducing me to business associates I'd never met. He probably thought it was my last public appearance. Rachel looked radiant, her pregnancy just beginning to show. Several guests congratulated her on the baby, and she blushed prettily, playing the single mother-to-be beautifully. No one questioned why she was having a baby alone. Modern times and all that. When dinner was served, I stood to make a toast. The room quieted, all eyes on me. Marcus smiled encouragingly, probably thinking I was about to praise Eleanor, the woman slowly murdering me. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight to celebrate Eleanor. I began, my voice steady and clear. Family is so important, isn't it? The bonds we choose, the bonds we're born into, and the bonds we create. Eleanor smiled, raising her glass slightly. Speaking of creating bonds, I have an announcement. I placed my hand on my stomach. Marcus and I are expecting. Twins, actually. The silence was deafening. Marcus's face drained of all color. His champagne glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. Rachel gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Eleanor's composure cracked just for a second before she forced a smile. That's wonderful, dear, she managed. It is wonderful, I agreed, especially since we were told it was impossible. But sometimes, when you stop taking certain medications, when you start seeing a different doctor, miracles happen. Marcus found his voice. Stella, darling, maybe we should sit down. Oh, I'm not done, I said, my smile never wavering. You see, I've learned so much about family lately. About trust. About the things people do for legacy. It's fascinating, really, what people will do to keep wealth in the bloodline. I pulled out my phone, connecting it to the restaurant's sound system that I'd arranged earlier with the manager. The first recording began to play, Marcus's voice filling the room. She'll be gone by spring. The vitamins are working, but slowly. Then Rachel's voice. Mom wants it done before the baby comes. The room erupted. Guests gasped, some standing up, others pulling out their phones to record. Eleanor tried to speak over the recording, but I played the next one louder. Her voice this time discussing how the family fortune must remain pure, how I was never really family, how sometimes elimination was necessary. "This is edited," Marcus shouted desperately. "This is fake." But I wasn't done. I projected documents onto the wall behind me, another arrangement with the restaurant, the trust documents excluding me, the payments to Dr. Brennan, the fertility clinic records showing Rachel carrying Marcus's biological child, the insurance policy on my life, and then the coup de grace, the medical reports showing heavy metals in my blood, the real fertility tests showing I was perfectly capable of conception, the evidence that every injection Marcus had arranged was designed to prevent pregnancy, not enable it. "You tried to murder me," I said, looking directly at Eleanor, slowly, carefully making it look like a medical tragedy. "All for money. All for your twisted idea of family purity." FBI agents entered the room then exactly as Benjamin and I had arranged with them. They'd been investigating the Hamilton business empire for months, based on the financial fraud evidence we'd provided. The attempted murder evidence had expedited everything. "Marcus Hamilton, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder fraud and falsification of medical records," the lead agent announced. Eleanor tried to maintain her dignity as they cuffed her too, but her facade was crumbling. Rachel collapsed into a chair, sobbing as they read her rights. "You can't prove anything," Marcus said, as they led him past me. "It's all circumstantial." "Actually," I said quietly, so only he could hear. "Rachel's diary is quite detailed. Every meeting, every plan, every payment. She documented everything. Also, Dr. Harrison was very cooperative when faced with losing his medical license. He told the FBI everything about how you paid him to fake my treatments." His face went gray as the reality hit him. 7 years of marriage, and he'd never really known me at all. He'd seen what he wanted to see. A weak woman he could control and eventually discard. The media coverage was immediate and brutal. Society matriarch arrested for attempted murder. Real estate heir plotted wife's death for fortune. The Hamilton name, so carefully cultivated over generations, was destroyed in a single evening. Rachel lost the baby a week later, the stress of the arrest and subsequent investigation too much for her pregnancy to survive. I felt no satisfaction in that, only sadness for a child who never asked to be part of such an evil scheme. She was charged as an accomplice but got a plea deal in exchange for testimony. 2 years in prison, 3 years probation. Marcus got 25 years, the evidence of financial fraud compounding the attempted murder charges. The searches for how to kill me were particularly damning, the jury said later. Eleanor died of a stroke while under house arrest awaiting trial. The stress of her empire crumbling, her family destroyed, was too much for her 70-year-old body to handle. The irony that she died of natural causes while planning my unnatural death wasn't lost on anyone. The Hamilton fortune was frozen during the investigation, but Benjamin made sure my interests were protected. As Marcus's legal wife carrying his biological children, I had claims they couldn't contest. The divorce was finalized while he was in prison, and I received a settlement that would ensure my children never wanted for anything. But more importantly, I got my life back. 6 months later, I gave birth to 2 healthy babies, a boy and a girl. Thomas and Patricia, named after the cousin who warned me and the doctor who gave me real medical care. They have Marcus's eyes, but my spirit, and they'll grow up knowing they are loved for who they are, not for their bloodline or wealth. The Hamilton business empire was dismantled, sold off piece by piece. Some went to Thomas Marcus's cousin, finally getting the inheritance he'd been denied. The rest was liquidated, the proceeds going to various creditors and settlements. I moved to another state, buying a modest house in a neighborhood where no one knew my story. I started a foundation for victims of fertility fraud, helping women who'd been medically deceived by people they trusted. It's become my life's work, turning my trauma into purpose. Rachel writes me letters from prison sometimes. They're full of apologies, regrets, and explanations I don't need. I don't respond. Some bridges once burned should stay ash. I see a therapist twice a week, working through the trauma of being slowly poisoned by people I loved. Trust doesn't come easily anymore. When new friends offer me food or drinks, I have to fight the urge to decline. When I feel a headache coming on, I have to remind myself it's just a headache, not heavy metals destroying my body. But I'm healing. Day by day, I'm reclaiming pieces of myself that I thought were lost forever. I date occasionally, though I'm upfront about my past. Some men run when they hear the story, others are fascinated by it. Neither response is what I'm looking for. Someday maybe I'll find someone who sees me as neither victim nor survivor, but simply as Stella. My children are thriving. They're two now, running around the backyard laughing at butterflies, blissfully unaware of the dark circumstances that preceded their existence. I've documented everything for them for when they're older and have questions about their father, their family history. They deserve the truth, but not until they're old enough to understand that evil sometimes wears a familiar face. I think about that evening, often arriving early at Marcus's office, hearing those whispered words that saved my life. If I'd been on time, if I hadn't heard that conversation, I'd be dead now. Eleanor would be playing grandmother to Rachel's child, telling everyone how tragic it was that I died trying to have a baby. Marcus would be the grieving widower, probably already remarried to someone more suitable, someone whose bloodline met Eleanor's standards. Instead, I'm alive. My children are alive. And the people who tried to kill me are either dead or in prison. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's survival. It's thriving. It's building a life so beautiful that the people who tried to destroy you become nothing more than a cautionary tale you tell when someone asks why you're so careful about who you trust. The whispered words I overheard that December evening changed everything. Stella can never know about the baby or about Mom's will. But I did find out. I learned about the baby, the will, the slow poisoning, the fertility fraud, all of it. And that knowledge, the truth they tried so hard to hide, became my salvation. Looking back, I realized the signs were there all along. The way Eleanor's lips would purse when she looked at me like I was temporary. The way Rachel's friendship felt performed rather than genuine. The way Marcus could hold me tenderly while planning my death. But love makes us blind to red flags. We explain them away, rationalize them, ignore the voice in our head screaming that something's wrong. I don't ignore that voice anymore. It saved my life once. Now I trust it implicitly. My story became a cautionary tale in certain circles. The society families whisper about it at their clubs, warning their children about the importance of prenups and background checks. The legal community uses it as a case study in conspiracy and attempted murder. The medical community reformed some of their practices around fertility treatments, requiring both partners to be present for all consultations. But for me, it's simpler than all that. It's a story about listening to your instincts, about fighting back when someone tries to erase you, about refusing to be a footnote in someone else's legacy. Sometimes people ask me if I regret marrying Marcus, if I wish I'd never met him. The answer is complicated. Without him, I wouldn't have my children. Without that experience, I wouldn't have found my purpose helping other women. Without surviving that attempted murder, I wouldn't know how strong I really am. So no, I don't regret it. I survived it. I learned from it. I grew from it. But I'll never take vitamins from my mother-in-law again. The sun sets now on a life I never imagined. My children playing in the yard. My work giving me purpose. My freedom hard-won, but deeply cherished. I arrived early that December evening and discovered a conspiracy that should have killed me. Instead, it gave me the greatest gift of all. The knowledge that I'm unbreakable. They thought they were writing my ending. Turns out they were just writing my beginning. What would you have done if you discovered your own family was plotting against you? Have you ever had that gut feeling that something was terribly wrong, only to discover you were right all along? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories of survival and triumph. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than they know. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who claim to love us the most. Trust your instincts. They might just save your life.